Monday morning, 8:12 a.m., and I'm standing in my yard watching a yellow bulldozer tear through the tree line like it's been personally invited to redecorate. The engine bellows, the blade slams down, and in seconds, my untouched acreage is getting shaved bald. Down at the end of the cul-de-sac, the entire HOA board stands in formation, all wearing identical neon visors, sipping green protein sludge, and clapping like they're at the grand opening of Disneyland. I hoist my recorded deed above my head, and wave it like a surrender flag nobody asked for. The bulldozer answers by beeping even louder. That's when I grab my phone and call the sheriff. My name is Graham Keppel, and I'm the kind of guy who apologizes to doors when I walk into them. I'm a freelance cartographer, yes. I draw maps for money, and no, your phone hasn't killed my profession yet. I bought 4 acres of raw land just beyond the recorded boundaries of a subdivision named Juniper Bend, because I like pine needles in my boots. And I really hate being told my mailbox has to be eggshell instead of ivory. The woman currently directing the annihilation of my forest is Priscilla Mott, president of the Juniper Bend, HOA. Her voice could slice bread from 50 yards. And her entire moral code boils down to because the covenants say so. Priscilla has decided my 4 acres are the unofficial communal backyard everybody forgot they own. I call it mine. It started 6 weeks ago with certified letters. The first complained that my scrub oaks were offending their approved coastal dune color palette. The second asked very sweetly that I remove my no trespassing signs because they radiated negative energy. The third, printed on heavy cream stock with a gold foil border, declared my land was causing visual obstruction, and gave me 10 business days to submit a landscaping plan for committee approval. I wrote back politely, patiently explaining that my parcel is not now, and has never been inside their HOA, so they could keep their ruler. Priscilla sent her husband to my door at 7 in the morning, while I was still in pajamas and bunny slippers, to hand-deliver a new letter claiming that even though my land was technically outside the plat, it still fell under their aesthetic jurisdiction because people could see it. Next came a glossy tri-fold brochure announcing the Juniper Bend Community Meadow project complete with watercolor renderings of wildflowers, a plant list, and a map that casually shaded my entire 4 acres in soft mint green, as if it had always been theirs. One illustration showed smiling families picnicking beneath my oak trees, while kids flew kites over ground that is currently home to a family of deer and exactly 1 grumpy cartographer. I mailed them copies of my deed, my recorded survey, and a post-it that said no in capital letters. Priscilla answered with a thick packet of fake easement notices, quoting HOA bylaws like they were the 10 Commandments. One claimed a 1,950 seconds historical common use provision from when the area was a dairy farm. Interesting. Since the title search I paid for shows unbroken private forest ownership since 1932. Then things turned creepy. My corner stake started vanishing in the night. I'd pound new ones in. 2 days later, gone. One afternoon, I caught a guy in khakis and a polo shirt hopping my fence with a measuring tape, muttering about site corridors for the Architectural Review Board. Turns out he was Priscilla's brother-in-law. A few days late, our Priscilla posted on Nextdoor that I had illegally annexed the HOA common area and was single-handedly blocking community beautification. She attached a photo of my private property signs shot from an angle that made it look like they were on the neighborhood trail. The comments exploded. People I never met called me a selfish hermit who was tanking their resale values. Someone threatened to call code enforcement. Someone else suggested I move to the mountains if I hated people so much. Meanwhile, tiny orange survey flags began sprouting along my boundary like fluorescent mushrooms, always 6 inches inside my line. The final straw arrived at sunrise on a Tuesday. I was pouring coffee when I heard the growl of diesel engines rolling up my gravel road. Through the window, I saw a full invasion force. ILO bulldozer, a skid steer, a flatbed loaded with sod rolls, and a pickup wearing magnetic Juniper Bend HOA signs like medals. At the front of the parade stood Priscilla Mott in a blinding yellow safety vest with reflective stripes. clutching a letter stamped Emergency Common Area Reclamation in red ink and topped with a clip art bald eagle that looked like it had been photocopied off a gas station mug. She raised a megaphone and announced they were restoring sightlines and that my overgrown brush posed an imminent fire risk to the community. Board members flanked her, clutching rolled blueprints and nodding like this was D-Day. Before I could find actual shoes, the bulldozer lunged forward and started gouging a trench straight through my buffer strip, flinging dirt and splintered fence posts into the air. I bolted outside in socks, phone already recording, plat map glowing on the screen, and planted myself directly in front of the blade. The operator slammed the brakes and stared down at me like I'd lost my mind. I held up the county parcel map and shouted that this was private property and he needed to kill the engine now. He glanced back at Priscilla. Priscilla started screeching that I was combative, trespassing, and a danger to workers. She ordered him to keep going and was just some squatter. I informed everyone within earshot that I held a recorded deed and a licensed survey, and what they were doing was felony criminal trespass plus property damage. Priscilla laughed an actual cartoon villain cackle and declared that HOA safety regulations overrode individual deeds. Then she dialed 911 and, in the tone people used to report loose tigers, told the dispatcher there was an aggressive male blocking essential mantic. And she feared for everyone's safety. Meanwhile, I'm standing there in plaid pajama pants holding a glowing phone like a complete lunatic. While she live narrated her victimhood, I made my own calls. First to the sheriff's non-emergency line dates, parcel number, the works. Second to County Environmental Services, attaching photos of the fresh trench, already bleeding orange mud straight toward the creek on my east line. A creek that happens to be mapped as a protected watershed cartographer, remember? I also attached a close-up of Priscilla's Eagle Seal letter. The file properties still read, Priscilla Mott HOA Docks. 22 minutes later, 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled up, followed by a code enforcement truck. And because the universe apparently has a sense of humor, a state environmental inspector who'd been auto-dispatched the second the watershed keyword ping. We all took a pleasant little walk to the property line while the bulldozer idled like a guilty dog. I handed over my deed, my stamped survey, the county GIS overlay, and for the grand finale, a time-stamped clip from my trail camera showing Priscilla herself at 11:47 p.m. 2 nights earlier, yanking up my corner steak with what appeared to be barbecue tongs. The deputies took their time flipping through every page of my paperwork while Priscilla kept chirping that this was all just a big mix-up and that the HOA had inherent custodial rights over anything visible from the cul-de-sac. The contractor foreman, now sweating through his Carhartt shirt and clearly doing mental math about liens, admitted he'd been hired directly by Priscilla Mott, shown the pretty pastel brochure as proof, and told not to worry about permits because HOA emergency work was automatically grandfathered. He fished the work order out of his truck signed in purple ink by Priscilla as president. 0 mention of ownership verification, 0 permits attached. The code enforcement officer wrote that down with the expression of a man who'd seen this movie before and already knew the ending. The lead deputy, a calm sergeant with the patience of someone who deals with drunk uncles at Thanksgiving, asked Priscilla very slowly if she happened to have a court order or recorded easement, or any document issued by an actual government entity that let her bulldoze private land. Priscilla proudly produced the eagle-stamped letter and her laminated HOA board badge still swinging from the zipper of her $140 yoga jacket like it was a United Nations credential. She tried to slide the community meadow brochure across the hood of the cruiser as supporting evidence. The sergeant's eyebrow performed an Olympic-level lift. She made one small hand motion, and every engine on site shut down at once. The sudden silence felt biblical. The code guy walked straight to the dozer and duct-taped a bright yellow stop work order to the blade like he was gift wrapping it. Meanwhile, the state environmental inspector was already pacing the fresh scar in the earth, tablet in one hand, camera in the other, photographing the orange plume of sediment sliding toward my creek. I pulled up the county's protected watershed overlay and handed him my phone. He zoomed, nodded grimly, then asked Priscilla whether she had filed the required erosion control plan before grading within 50 feet of a blue line stream. Priscilla blinked twice and said it was only a minor landscape contingency and permits were for big commercial projects, not volunteer community efforts. The inspector's pen started moving so fast I thought it might catch fire. That's when the citations began raining like a summer thunderstorm. Unpermitted grading, unauthorized disturbance of protected riparian buffer, sediment discharge into state waters, criminal mischief. They were already estimating over $8,000 in tree and fence damage. Each ticket got read aloud like a restaurant special. Priscilla's tan faded to the color of printer paper. Then the sheriff explained, in the tone you use with the toddler holding scissors, that creating a fake emergency reclamation order, complete with clip art eagle, and using it to trick contractors and 911 dispatchers was called filing a false instrument. Her dramatic 911 call labeled the legal owner a dangerous trespasser on his own deed. Separate misdemeanor, false report to law enforcement. Doing it all while flashing Thea title to intimidate people into helping? That smelled a lot like official misconduct. Priscilla attempted but we were only beautifying, defense. The sergeant shut it down with 6 words. Ma'am, you bulldozed the wrong land. Her knees actually buckled a little when the cuffs came out. Priscilla Mott terror of paint color infractions and unapproved flamingo placement was gently folded into the back seat of a sheriff's cruiser while still clutching her megaphone like a teddy bear. As the car pulled away, she kept insisting through the window that everyone was overreacting and that reasonable adults could still settle this at the next board meeting. The contractor, now cooperating at the speed of light, spent the next 3 hours using his own equipment to push every speck of dirt back into the trench and haul the rolls of sod away. The path of retreat went straight across the HOA's prized common area and directly through Priscilla's own front lawn, leaving 2-foot-deep ruts that swallowed her President 2023 to 2025 stepping stone hole. 1 month late. The courtroom was standing room. Only half the neighborhood showed up with popcorn energy. Priscilla, in a navy blazer that did not hide the fact she was still wearing her reflective safety vest underneath, like some kind of hostage negotiation, pleaded guilty to criminal trespass, filing a false instrument, and false report to law enforcement. The prosecutor rolled the trail cam footage of her yanking up my survey stake with salad tongs. Someone in the back row actually snorted. The contractor testified, voice cracking, that Mrs. Mott had promised him everything, was fully permitted through the association, and he'd believed her because who expects the HOA president to lie about property lines? The judge, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from granite and disappointment, asked Priscilla whether she understood that HOA covenants do not suspend the United States Constitution, the Clean Water Act, or Basic Criminal Code. Priscilla managed a tiny yes. Ma'am, the judge asked why a grown woman in a leadership position thought she could forge government-looking documents and destroy someone else's trees because they offended her sightlines. Priscilla opened her mouth, closed it, and wisely let her attorney pull her gently back into silence. Sentence: full restitution to me 18 for OO and change for surveying, legal fees, tree replacement, and therapy for the deer. 2-year statewide ban on holding any HOA office. The association itself got slapped with a $75,000 state environmental fine, plus a 3-year court-ordered restoration plan native plants, silt fencing, water testing every quarter, all paid for by the same dues that just went up 40%. Word is the HOA's lawyer already has a contribution letter drafted with Priscilla's name on it, for the cherry on top. 80 hours of community service specifically restoring riparian buffers along protected creeks. Wearing a bright orange vest that says Department of Environmental Protection in letters the size of dinner plates. Plus, a mandatory property law continuing education course and a full-page apology in the local paper titled, "I do not own my neighbor's land." When the gavel cracked, Priscilla stood frozen, mouth half open, laminated HOA badge still pinned crookedly to her blazer, like a medal from a war she definitively lost. Her attorney guided her back to the table while the bailiff called the next case, and for the first time in recorded history, Priscilla Mott had absolutely nothing to say.